You. All right, here we go.
All right, so we just started recording. We missed the first slide, but for those of you who are watching after, we are in the August Lunch and Learn for WiscWeb, and we're just kind of chatting through what we did in the July Lunch and Learn. So we looked at a mural activity. Matt threw that link in the chat there. The first prompt that we had was about the purpose of WiscWeb. So here's the major themes that we found. First, several users noted that WiscWeb helps those that don't have a lot of time for building out a website or don't have the expertise needed to fully code their own websites. So this was very apparent within this theme that many WiscWeb admins and editors are only doing website maintenance as part of their job. Another strong theme was campus branding. So many of you noted that WiscWeb is intended for helping to create a unified look and feel for websites. Those that use the service would be looking for a site that looks like it is part of UW-Madison. You noted several times that WiscWeb is a service that is intended for helping users through training and support. I really enjoyed the person who shared that they also saw us as emotional support / comic relief / therapists. I'll say that we are here for you through those ups and downs that come with website maintenance, and we'll try to be that shoulder to cry on when you need it. But I just thought that was a funny little comment. I think this goes hand in hand with the first theme, but users specifically noted that WiscWeb is meant to be easy to use. With so many folks using the service that don't have a lot of time for website maintenance or don't have formal development training, this totally makes sense. So you saw WiscWeb as a lower barrier option for building a website. I wasn't expecting this next theme, and I thought it was really interesting. Several users mentioned that WiscWeb is meant for providing a consistent experience as well. I think that this may tie to things like the campus branding, but I also think it relates to that ultimate end user experience as well. If you have other thoughts on what you meant by that, I'd be very interested to hear them, so throw them in the chat. And finally, you noted that WiscWeb is for communicating web standards and best practices. This includes things like brand, accessibility, and just good practices for building sites. All right. So our second prompt of the activity was about WiscWeb's target audience, if you recall. Most notably, you noted that WiscWeb is for everyone. This was defined sort of differently by different people. Some noted that anyone on campus could use the service. Others said that the nature of the service meant that it was approachable for all. And then others noted that the content built within WiscWeb sites is publicly accessible and therefore it's available to everyone. So just sort of different takes on what that meant. I think I mentioned this within the session itself, but something really fun about this prompt was my original intention for this question was to understand who our target audience was as a service. So meaning the people who are actually building and maintaining sites. Who are those people? What do they need? What are some common traits about them, etc. But through this activity, you reminded me that we're building products that are obviously meant for mass consumption. So your websites are viewed by people all over the world. So the target audience also includes a major theme around that ultimate end user, we're calling it, or in other words, like the visitors to your sites. And then mirroring notes about what WiscWeb is intended for, several folks noted in this section that the target audience of the service is people with limited web knowledge or those who don't have a lot of time to build a website. And finally, we saw a big trend of using the specific term campus communicators when describing the WiscWeb audience. This was another surprise to me. I just had never thought about it in those terms. It was just a cool way of wording it. So I thought that was neat to share. All right. For the final section of the activity, we pose the question, what tasks should we, WiscWeb, be focusing on for the next fiscal year? The following were the major themes that we found. Users wanted to see us adding more options. We saw a strong appreciation for new features and enhancements in this activity. The common language that was used was continue to roll out new features, which I appreciate because it shows that you understand that we are working on enhancements, but it says like we want to see more of that. Another strong theme here was an interest in support and training. This is a shared need amongst our users and a major focus of our service in general. There was a wider range of responses here, but generally folks are looking to keep getting that support through their website journey and really appreciate new training opportunities. Our third theme was integrations and interoperability. I realize these terms may not be well understood, but in the IT world, this meant that we saw requests for including other technology within your WiscWeb site. We didn't see a lot of repeat requests, like very specific technology coming up multiple times, but with this overall did show an appreciation for integrating websites with other tooling that is being used within campus departments. And then this shouldn't come as a huge surprise as it came up in our previous slides, but another theme was an interest in best practice guidance. I saw a need here for WiscWeb admins and editors to gain a better understanding of improvements that they can make on their sites, and maybe even a way to understand how well their sites are meeting their users' needs. So I want to thank you all for that feedback that you provided us in the last session. It was so helpful to have. It's really crucial for us to get this kind of feedback and information. It is much appreciated. So I also wanted to let you know that we will use this information to help guide our service planning over the next fiscal year. So these activities aren't just for nothing. We're definitely using this info to help expand the service and improve. So here's some things I wanted to share, some things that we are looking at here. We recently completed a team activity where we reflected on feedback provided and we updated our yearly roadmap accordingly. So we looked right at this data that you had and we made some tweaks based on that. In an effort to commit to your needs more for features, we also completed a recent exercise where we reviewed the top feature requests in our feature request board. And we have a couple of features that we believe we should be able to make progress on in the near future. And work tickets have been created for those, and they've been added to our Q1 roadmap. I've personally taken notes of a few requests that you had within the activity that felt like things that we could easily deliver on right away. I hope to sprinkle some of these into future lunch and learn sessions. Examples include getting more best practice guidance, doing more demos of new features, collaborations with other campus groups, and accessibility tips. And selfishly, I'm hoping to use some of your own descriptions of WiscWeb to update some of our about language on our website. So to be honest, you all said it so well in how you describe the service in this activity. So I hope to sprinkle a couple of those terms in with our website, the WiscWeb website in the future. And finally, we've made a point to share all of these findings with leadership here at Do It so that they also know what is important to you and what you're looking for from our service. I can confidently say they really enjoyed reading through this feedback, so thank you. All right, next section here is updates and reminders. In an effort to get you some helpful info and keep delivering on requests outlined in that July Lunch and Learn activity, I'm bringing you a new section I'm calling updates and reminders. These are things that I think you should be aware of and things that might help you set best practices for your sites. So first up is an update. I'm happy to report that 75% of sites that were using Events Calendar have had it deactivated and are already using alternative options. The majority have moved on to the UW Events plugin, but we do have a few folks who are opting for Today.Wisc or Google Calendar. I wanted to point out here for those who were not aware, there's two things I'd like you to keep an eye out for. One, we are putting important updates about this migration in our announcements note in the dashboard. So if you log into WiscWeb, there's a box up at the top. Right now it appears in blue, and it gives you messaging about this migration and helpful links as well. As we get closer to the deadline for events calendar, you may see that messaging change. You might also see the color change to show that it's kind of more urgent. And 2, we're putting a bunch of content on our website about this transition. If you're not accustomed to visiting the homepage of our website, wiscweb.wisc.edu, these posts are also listed in a little widget now in your dashboard. So anything that we're adding as news or posts on our site is pulled into that dashboard on your, or that widget on your dashboard. A great little post example is one that I created as frequently asked questions about this migration. Just things that I'm hearing most commonly that I want to make sure you have answers for. That is linked as an article there. An exciting update that I can't remember if we shared last time, maybe Matt remembers. Did you know that there's now a practitioners group for those? Sorry, I just muted myself. For those looking to get a little bit more Google Analytics help. So this came up as a smaller theme within our mural activity that folks were looking for some more training in Google. And I wanted to make sure that you were aware in case you weren't already. Our team is not always able to stay up to date on everything that Google Analytics can do. So this will be a really nice resource for you as you continue to play around in Google Analytics 4. Matt, if you have the ability to throw that Teams link in the chat, that would be helpful just so folks can join that if they're not already part of it. Another update is sort of also a reminder. We sent you all a link to the WiscWeb user feedback survey on Monday. And when you have a moment, if you haven't already, we would love it if you could take some time to provide us with feedback so that we can continue to improve our service offering. A reminder here, we mentioned this last time, but if you're looking to have your site launched by the first day of the fall semester, we'd like you to submit that launch request by August 24th. This gives our team enough time to get things like DNS and SSL certs in place on time. You can imagine there's a lot of launch requests all at the same time, so we just have to kind of make sure we've got things sequenced out a little bit. Another reminder, events calendar is going away on October 31st. So we've been talking about this a lot. Just sending that reminder in case you're here for the first time. It is going away. So if you are still working on this migration, please know that we are here to help. I know this was not an ideal situation. It wasn't an ideal timeline. So we wanted to make ourselves very available to you during this transition. We have office hours where you can meet with staff member to chat through your migration, get your questions answered, etc. Please utilize this resource if you're struggling with how to get started or moving forward. We are happy to help you out. And our final reminder, please remember to view and update your users lists for your site. So we have tons of folks who we are reaching out to with this events calendar migration who are no longer working on sites, and that makes them kind of upset sometimes. So if there are folks on your site listed in your users list who are no longer working on the site, please remove them so that we don't spam them with any mail that's unrelated to their current positions. Okay, so I also wanted to share a new activity today in an effort to be more transparent about what we're working on. I'm hoping to periodically share updates on what's on our roadmap. This slide is a list of things we've committed to exploring in Q1 of fiscal year 24. I've added a red asterisk next to the items that specifically relate to requests from users from our mural activity in July, our surveys, and our feature request board, just so that you can see that we are listening and adding those into our roadmap. So here's a look behind the WiscWeb curtain. As you already know, we are spending a significant amount of time this quarter on the events calendar migration. This involves a good deal of communications to users who have the plugin active, as well as one-on-one help and support. Both Matt and I are meeting with folks regularly in our office hours to walk users through the process of transitioning to alternative options. Second, through activities like this mural project from the last Lunch and Learn and surveys like the one that we sent on Monday, we're seeing a major trend for users wanting more functionality. It's not always easy for us to uncover functionality requests that suit broad needs. what tends to happen is people are asking for different things, so it's kind of tough. But there are two that we're currently looking at. One is an improvement to the media library, particularly for groups that just have a ton of imagery. And we're also looking into content layout padding options to provide more flexibility and control over white space. What these look like, we're not sure yet. We're just hopeful that we might be able to provide something there. We are also researching, for those of you who might be familiar, Gutenberg, which is a new editor for WordPress. We believe this editor could have some great capabilities that help satisfy some of those design, flexibility, customization needs that the university and this larger audience has. We're in the early stages of understanding what Gutenberg can do and how we might be able to utilize it within WiscWeb. And we also chatted last time about this, but we're additionally working on that narrowed with option for you all. From the mural activity, I learned that you are all looking for more best practice guidance. I've noted this in our roadmap that we need to explore ways that we can bring you some of this guidance for building great websites. Full disclosure, exactly what that looks like is still TBD, but some things I'm exploring here are, like listening sessions, more best practice guidance within our KB docs, recommended use case for page elements on the UW theme site, and sharing good website examples with you in these lunch and learn sessions. If you have ideas for that best practice guidance that you were thinking of, or maybe that you'd love to see, please share them in the chat. That is very helpful for us. It might not always seem like it because we tend to not go deep into these details, but we are always working on service performance. I can't remember a time, honestly, that hasn't been a major player in our roadmap. With such a big multi-site instance of WordPress, it's just not always easy. But rest assured, we are chipping away at this at all times. Two projects we have in flight right now are creating a global CDN for a faster delivery of media assets and improvements to AWS that are a bit technical in nature. I'm not going to go into big detail here, but a great example is our new AWS WAF, which stands for Web Application Firewall. In addition to other updates, we are fine-tuning our Amazon Web Services WAF to ensure that nefarious traffic does not interfere with the stability of the service. So in other words, ensuring that we don't go down just because we get hit with bad traffic. If you weren't aware, we're getting hit with bad traffic all the time. WordPress is one of those tools that is just hit a ton. So we're constantly dealing with this. So we're just trying to make sure those kind of traffic or that those attacks don't impact your sites. A little insight here into how I work. I always try to make sure that we're chipping away at technical debt so that so then we nearly always have some sort of technical debt tasks on our roadmap. Two things we're working on here is some cleanup and streamlining of our Apache setup, removing unused plugins and child themes from the database, things like that. And finally, we've got two big-ish updates or upgrades this quarter. WordPress core has a new version 6.3 that's out that we are testing, and an upgrade to PHP 8.1, which is even bigger probably. Upgrades like this aren't necessarily simple in WiscWeb. They require testing in our dev and QA environments to ensure that the websites won't break, as well as periodic custom development that we have to put in place, especially with PHP updates to fix any errors that arise. I want to note here that this is not a comprehensive list. There's a lot more that we're working on as well, but I felt this was, like a digestible amount of content to kind of highlight as a snapshot view of what we do.
I just wanted to throw into one of the updates part of this, and you hit on it with the things that we also do that aren't a part of this list. I am consistently looking at plugin updates that need to be done. And so again, part of this process, and I guess, again, behind the curtain kind of thing, I've talked about it before, we've talked about it before as a group. Plugin updates are regularly happening. And so we have to make sure that we throw them into our various environments, test them, make sure they're working okay, and then eventually move them to production. We have a number of plugins that we use already that have to be tested. This is one of the reasons why we keep things as light as we can in WiscWeb and don't add a lot of plugins, because it adds a lot of overhead to our daily work to test them, make sure they're secure. We have to support them to a certain extent. And so, I mean, that's just kind of one of those debt aspects that we deal with on a regular basis and that we do on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like there's things like that, like the plugin updates that are just like always part of what we do. It's just part of the nature of WordPress and
yeah, and I wanted to touch on it mainly from a standpoint of it was a big part of the mural. A lot of people ask for us to really expand our plugin library and allow more features and allow people to do a lot more custom stuff in WiscWeb. And I guess to put it pointedly, we don't do that because we have to support it. And if we allow anybody to do whatever they want and something breaks, we have to unbreak it, and we don't want to have to be responsible for unbreaking things. So
I would say it's a delicate balance of how do we,
I'm more pointed in that.
Yeah. How do we provide you with more features and abilities while also making something that our very small team can safely and securely support? So we are listening. We're just trying to find ways of doing it that we feel like are scalable and supportable long term.
Yeah, and that's kind of the effect of the UW events plugin that Scott and Andrea built is an example of the fact that we know there's a need. We could not maintain and continue to maintain the events calendar plugin. It just simply wasn't possible for us. So we adjusted and we did something that would at least meet the broad need. And Scott and Andrea are constantly doing this. We're looking at ways to meet these needs and these features that people want, but doing it in a supportable and sustainable way for our group.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things with like vendor plugins like the events calendar is they're constantly evolving their feature set to meet their users' needs as well. And a lot of times that doesn't necessarily align with what our users need. So then you get, a plugin that has a bunch of different features that people aren't using, but it's there bloating it up and causing issues and errors and stuff like that. So while we might not want to accept vendor plugins in, we're kind of looking at the functionality that folks are requesting and figuring out how we can implement it in a way where it kind of just meets the needs that people want without going super overboard so that we can actually update it and keep it working.
Yeah. And I just it's a digression I just wanted to make quickly because Jenna and I were looking at the roadmap earlier on last week or this week or whatever, and I was looking at some of those notes that people put in there about like feature requests and plugin requests and things like that. And I always want to make sure I point out that I am sorry, I have teenagers behind me arguing with each other. That we're pointing out the fact that like it's not that we're ignoring you, it's not that we don't want to do these things, it's just that we have to make sure we can support it and we can sustain it. And I know that frustrates a lot of folks with some of the constrictions that we put on WiscWeb, but at the same time we put those constrictions in place or restrictions in place so that we can better support the service as a whole. So all right, I'm done digressing.
Good point. Thank you for elaborating on that a little bit more. I'm going to pause here. We'll take a moment to take questions. If you have questions about the July Lunch and Learn activity or the updates and reminders, please feel free to unmute, post in the chat. I'm also very curious about how you feel about the Q1 roadmap. So do you have questions about that? Is there something that you wish you saw there and you're not seeing? Something that you would like us to go into more detail on? Do you like learning about what we're working on, or is it kind of like not super helpful for you? Do you hate it? Let us know. We'll just take a moment to pause there in case there are questions.
Also, the Q&A thing is open. I did have somebody ask a Gutenberg question that I answered, but
oh, nice.
Go ahead and throw some questions in there if you want us to address any of those things.
Yeah, and I can kind of touch on that question so that we have that for the recording and for everyone who didn't see that. What is Gutenberg Discovery? Is that related to the free online books at gutenberg.org? So essentially, WordPress has created a new, I think it's just considered like an editor for WordPress that is entirely different than what we have now. It's very block based, it's very modernized, and it has some really nice features. But there's also some barriers and maybe things that we would need to consider. It's a very drastic change from what we have now. So we see the potential in this editor for the audience that we have here in WiscWeb, particularly around maybe like the customization, design options, flexibility needs that you all have identified. So we're interested in exploring it more in case that can help satisfy those needs. But there's this other end that's, I would say the learning curve is probably higher. It would require us to have entirely new documentation. There's a lot of like support considerations, things like that. Feel free to pop more questions about that in here if you have any. And Andrea added a really nice link there. Here's an overview of the block editor in Gutenberg. So if you're interested in learning more, there's more info there. Thank you, Andrea. I feel like it's quiet audience today. I don't know if it's end of the week, end of the summer, but feel free. If you have questions, we are here to answer. All right. We will move on to our next activity, but if you think of anything in the meantime, please feel free to add it to the chat. The next thing that we're doing is Scott Berg, one of our developers is, but he's the developer of this plugin, is doing a little demo of a plugin that is called, it is for when you want a page to not be indexed by Google. So for various reasons, folks might want to do this. So I am going to hand things over to Scott. I'm going to stop sharing here. And Scott, whenever you're ready, you can screen share.
And also, Scott, can you give a preamble? Like we put the meta tag stuff in. Could you give a quick preamble as to why the meta tag no index stuff wasn't working as intended, and then lead into the demonstration of this?
Yep. Can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. Zoom every window around, so fun stuff. Yeah, so like Matt and Jenna were both saying, we have a new plugin that's available for site administrators or admins to activate on their site. If you want to use this kind of functionality, I'll kind of go over what it's used for, what it's potentially not used for, and give kind of a general overview. But yeah, like Matt had said, we do have meta tag options built into the UW theme to kind of add some social so, to switch things out for like social cards and how things show up in Google and whatnot. We had at one point had documentation written that you could no index pages by using this custom meta tag field. Unfortunately, we found that that actually does not work as expected, and there's a slight difference between how you have to implement no index tags versus social media tags. So we're going to be updating the UW theme to kind of make this a little bit more clear that these are for pretty much just social media. But yeah, so I guess the kind of broad overview of this is, what is this for? So no indexing a page means that it doesn't show up in any search console or search engines indexes, which means it won't show up when people search things. So there's kind of more limited use cases for this, but a lot of people did have the needs and people were requesting it. So this would be used for something like if you have more of a marketing website that you don't necessarily want people to find on their own. If you have a link that you're emailing out to people and you don't want people to be able to, find it by Googling, this would be a use case for this. Another thing to preface this with is this does not make this content magically hidden. It is still publicly accessible. It's still there. And with everything else on WiscWeb, you should not be uploading or putting any sort of sensitive or restricted data on this. WiscWeb is not for that, and this does not hide that kind of information from the public. So it's more just limiting the visibility of this in Google search or other search engines. So if you want to use this functionality, we opted to put it into a plugin so that folks could turn it on if they wanted to use it on their sites. This would help kind of limit the UI so that it doesn't get too cluttered if folks don't want to actually use this. So it's in there right now. It is the UW noindex / remove pages from search crawlers. I believe we will be updating this with a little bit more information and links to KB documentations as well at some point. But yeah, if you turn that on, what you'll get is on the sides of pages and posts, there is this little checkbox here that will pop up. And all you have to do to hide a page from Google is check the box and update your page. So there's not too much flashy stuff to show here, unfortunately. But there have been a lot of cases where folks have written and said like, hey, I don't want this content to show up in Google. How can I do that? So this provides the way to do that. A couple notes as well. If you're making a new page and you put this option on, Google will kind of not ever index your page and not be aware of it and not show it in Google searches. If you have a page that already exists that you want this to take effect on, you have to have, Google basically has to recrawl and reindex your site before that change will take place, and we don't really have a way to control that. If you are using Google Search Console, you can go in, you can put the URL of the page in and click, I believe there's a button to like request a recrawl or something like that. And Google will look at it again and update their indexes based on the new content of the page. So this will not be an instant change if you go in and check the box and hit update. Google will still hold on to that page for however long they usually keep stuff unless you recrawl it. And also just a plug for Google Search Console as well. It's a very helpful tool. And in this case, you can use it to kind of validate it. So I just plugged in the URL for this page right here that I had created. So this, again, you don't really see anything visually different, but kind of behind the scenes, there's some stuff getting added to the page that's telling Google not to take this in and put it on their search results. So if we go over to the Google Search Console, I plugged in this. It does take a hot second to run the actual test of it on the live URL, but Google, I did that before the presentation started, and you can see that Google is respecting the no index tag, and it's saying that it will not put this in search results. So a couple other things to note here is the Google still does crawl the page, which means it'll look at the content there, it'll find links on it, it will potentially follow those and index other pages that are linked to. So that's something to be aware of. Like I said before, this does not just magically hide anything, it just makes it not show in Google search results or other search engine results. And the other thing to also note there is that these are kind of just guidelines or requests to Google and other search engines. Google and Bing and a lot of the major search engines are good and they will respect these types of things, but there are also search engines out there that won't. So, you know, we're covering our bases with the big ones that most people use, but there are some other tools out there that would potentially be able to still crawl your sites and find this information. So yeah, that's the overview of it.
Yeah, we did have a
Yep.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat. So Sheena asked, could this be used to build out an intranet of sorts? I'll let you touch on that.
I would definitely not recommend doing that, especially because I think the idea of an intranet is more to have it kind of locked down and be more private. Like I said, all this information is still very, very public. People can get to it if they have the URL, if you're linking to it elsewhere on your site, and stuff like that. I think as far as the intranet goes, there are some other options that you can do if you want to lock that down with the password protection feature that WordPress offers. I believe, we've told people about the shibboleth thing, right? And we've kind of got some people testing that, or?
We're just in the early, we're still beta testing, but we haven't made it more widely available outside of the beta test yet.
Okay. Yeah, so we are beta testing kind of using Shibboleth, which is the NetID service that campus uses to password protect pages in that sense, where users will have to log in via their normal NetID login, and then that will grant them access to the page. But yeah, we're currently testing that out and hoping that that can be something that we offer a little bit more widely going forward.
So Sarah hit on what I was going to say actually, and if there's a spot where you really do want to lock down content to a particular audience or to just net ID authentication, the knowledge base is probably a better location for that, because we do have the ability in the knowledge base to lock things down by specific net ID, by manifest group, and by just campus net ID in general. So you do have a few more options using the knowledge base. You are limited in the fact that it's the knowledge base. It doesn't have all the page builder functionality that obviously WiscWeb and the UW theme does. But if you're just trying to put text-based content with some images maybe in there and linking to things, the knowledge base might be the better option there than what you might want to try to do within a WiscWeb page or site. And then Laura, to your test case, in what you're trying to do there, if you wanted to pilot some web content, I would say, Scott, I don't know if you have the plugin active in this location, but we do have the public preview plugin that allows you to basically create a draft of a page and then create a live URL of that particular page that can be shared out. I think we set it to 7 days or 5 days that URL is active. I can't remember which number it was, but you do have that option as well, as just to create a draft page of something and then share that draft out publicly if you so desire.
Yeah. And this could potentially be used as a way to pilot content if you wanted to share it out to people. I think the other thing to be aware of there is like the information on the page will still be looked at by Google if it's linked to. So another feature of this that I kind of didn't show off is that it does remove the page from the sitemap that WordPress generates for your page. So this is kind of what a sitemap looks like. It's basically just every page that's on your site, whether or not it's linked to. And by no indexing one of these, we also remove it from this sitemap. So if there isn't a link to it elsewhere, it would be pretty hard for someone to track down that content. Not impossible, but difficult. So it could definitely be used to do that kind of thing where you're, putting out some content you maybe don't want it to be indexed and searched yet. But yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember is that this does a job of hiding it, but it's not fully gone. And I want to make that very clear. But yeah, I also wouldn't recommend doing this for like every page on a site. I think this is a tool that should be used sparingly in very specific use cases where you might need it, which is why we opted to put it as a plugin and not just something that's on for everyone, because you want Google to index the content on your site. If there's marketing content or if there's content that you want to send to a specific group of people, that would be a use case where you'd want to not index that potentially. But at the end of the day, Google and other search engines are one of the major ways that people get driven to the content on your site. So,
well, and also if you're using Google programmable search on your site and you want to make use of the search functionality within your site, no indexing pages means they don't show up in your site search either.
Yeah, good call.
Good points.
Yeah. So it has it has its benefits, but just be aware of the fact that the use should be very specific and, as Scott said, limited to very specific instances.
Cool. I can answer any other questions if folks want to put them in chat. Otherwise, I'll kick it back to Jenna.
Yeah, we'll pause in case there's anything. That one's a little bit more technical, googly, which is always interesting because Google really does do, they're pretty good, but they do what they want. So it's hard to have, certainty there.
And this is one of the reasons why we're doing this on Zoom now as well, is so that you all can unmute and ask, not just type in and chat if you want to. Provides for more back and forth.
All right. Well, feel free to add that to the chat, or if you want to like raise your hand or anything. If you do have questions, I will start on the next item on the agenda, which is you all had kind of noted that it's helpful to see examples of what other folks are doing on their websites, and that's something that's kind of hard to deliver sometimes, just because we have tons of different sites. There's lots of examples, and it kind of depends on what you're looking for in some cases, or maybe there's a lot of sites out there and we're like, well, this might not be the best use of XYZ. But I do have two sites that I'd like to share with you today that I think are great examples of what you can accomplish in the UW theme, which is the theme that we use in WiscWeb, in hopes that it is helpful to you. Both sites are built by, or well, I shouldn't say that. One of the sites is fully built by Ketter Joyner. You may have interacted with Ketter in like the design community in sessions like this for WiscWeb, maybe back in the day when she was working more closely with WiscWeb in things like the Open Lab sessions. If you haven't met Ketter, she's a real treat, so you're missing out if you haven't met her. But she is really great at design, and she knows the UW theme really well. And she has two things that she's worked on recently. One is a website needs survey site. So we've been doing some surveying of broad campus needs in the area of website services to understand needs that are outside of WiscWeb and inside of WiscWeb. So it could be folks that are in web hosting, self-hosting, in WiscWeb, whatever it may be, but just kind of understanding where those broad needs lie. So she made a really great website for that. Let me share my screen here. And that is this one. Some of you may have seen this in the session that she did for the WordPress users group. So apologies for sharing one that you might already have seen. But for those of you who didn't see it, this is Ketter's website for that data. So I thought this was really neat because it kind of shows different ways of displaying content in the UW theme that you don't normally get to see. So she has nice use of content here. I would say a small amount of text compared to what we normally see, right? Like very simple. She's bulleting, can't say it, bulleting, using bullets on the site to kind of break up content. Also nice use of buttons here. Breaking things up for the eye with different content layouts. Again, good use of white space. It makes it very readable here. These are just things that I like about it, but if you have things that you like or have questions about, again, that's a nice thing to throw in the chat there. Great use of imagery and different page elements from the theme. So this is just a nice way to kind of displaying user personas that she found in this discovery. Let's see. Again, kind of breaking it up by content, giving little overviews, using buttons, changing up the imagery. So she was kind of using photos here and icons here. Again, different uses of different page elements. She is using the narrowed width content class that we talked about a few sessions ago as well, which is really helpful for the eye to kind of for readability. So you'll notice that there's more white space, but it just makes it a little bit more approachable for the content. So I'll put this one in the chat here. Matt already did. Thank you, Matt. Yep. Just a really great example. Like I said, she's very talented at knowing, I guess like the user experience side of things and the design side of things, and those are interrelated as well. So great website example if you're looking for ideas. Some of these links do link out to more info too if you want to see another page of examples. There are different ways of displaying like graphs here. A nice little way to include a quote. I love this like idea of, breaking it up in a 2-column layout with imagery, but then having like just a short little accordion panel here for more info if you want to dive in deeper. Just great options all around. Another site that Ketter worked on but didn't fully build out is the UW theme site. So if you haven't seen the UW theme site recently, she's made some really neat updates to it. She dove into kind of like what are the most important things for people to know, and wanted to display them in a way that were a little bit more like modernized and approachable. She added, she really thought through the kind of intro text. Um, there's always been like a download button here, but just kind of changed that up a little bit, made it feel more like a homepage. It was like a big bulleted list previously. She added some nice imagery here. She really highlighted some of the websites that are using the UW theme already. So just because someone's using the UW theme doesn't mean they're in WiscWeb. So keep that in mind. Some of these examples are more customized uses of the UW theme in a particular department. But if you're looking for website examples, there's a couple there, and it's neat to kind of have those options. If we'd like to see, there's a question in the chat here from Tiffany. If we would like to see, or if we would like to copy these display ideas, how do we do that? So we are aware that users are kind of interested in like more templates, which is kind of something that's definitely on our radar. Haven't started building anything yet, but maybe even something that the Gutenberg editor might be helpful with. So something that we are looking at and hope to provide one day, but currently we don't have like template options. But if you were interested in one of these design options and you weren't quite sure how they set it up, that's a perfect use of our office hours. So feel free to drop time on our calendars. Matt and I meet with folks all the time to go through these kind of things. Take it away, Matt, if you had.
No, I was going to just add in the fact that like I get this question often about how did such and such page do the thing that they're doing, and because it's WiscWeb and I have the ability to log into any WiscWeb site, I will often simply log in and kind of walk through like, you looking at the web needs page, I can walk through it and say, okay, that's a text block at the top. That's another single text block with just a link in it. Text block, that's featured content blocks right there, or text blocks in the middle. You can kind of visually, if you're familiar enough with the theme, you can kind of walk up and down a page and get an idea for like what page elements are they using in certain spaces. And then for some of the more, I shouldn't say complicated, but more design type elements in there, those are icons. She's using those icons that exist as part of the Campus Do It icon pack. And so, you could do that as well. So in a lot of those cases, it's just a conversation of showing you like they're using this type of page element in this particular way that is creating that particular look and feel. So it's a lot of times nothing too extravagant other than just knowing the page element that they chose to use in that location.
Yeah, and for those of you who weren't aware or maybe haven't utilized this option before, we try to talk about it, but in case you weren't familiar, on our website, wiscweb.wis.edu, if you go to support and then office hours, that's where you can kind of sign up. Matt and I both offer office hours every week. We love when we can kind of help you out through those sessions. This was kind of our new virtual option. We used to do open labs, which I know folks really loved the open labs, but we are virtual now. If that changes for any reason, I'm sure we would explore in-person open lab options again, but we are happy to help. That's what this time is for, and we would love to see you utilize it if you have questions. So this is a perfect use of that time.
I'll throw another site in there that you could and should go take a look at. Jenna, if you could go to jennatest.wiscweb.wisc.edu.
Okay. I feel like this, I haven't updated this in a while.
No.
So.
But I will say very pointedly, Jenna built this site out because of the fact that we needed a place to put some of the demos of like things that are built into the UW theme, and Jenna wanted to put something somewhere to actually like be able to show people. But honestly, there's a lot of stuff in this particular page, just from layout examples and all the various page element features that you could take a look at. And she's done it in obviously a very humorous way as well, but like you can see like there is no special customization to Jenna's site. It is literally the base UW theme and taking advantage of the various ways that you can do things within the UW theme. And so I really do like the fact that like this really is as simple and as extravagant as you can get with just the base theme itself.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for me even just to see kind of like as we add new features. This page, this style settings page, was when we added like the drop shadow and the card style options for like text block and feature content block and stuff. And it's interesting to me to see, to like explore it and find out like what is and is not possible. So I hope it's helpful for you. Just know that I haven't updated this in a little while, and I certainly have some goofy content in these examples, in these example pages. So apologies in advance if you run into stuff like this is about Harry Styles, because I thought style settings, Harry Styles.
If you don't enjoy TV doctors, you won't enjoy the faculty staff list page.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I went with doctors. This Ursula was testing something else, so disregard Ursula. But yeah, like I said, could clean this up. But yeah, these are some examples that you can use to just get ideas on different ways of laying out content. As we find more of these, we will try to sprinkle them in, since this is a kind of like a known need now is having these examples. But again, let us know, come drop by office hours too. Like that's a great opportunity. Sometimes it's helpful to know like the specific type of content you're displaying. Sometimes people are like, I have this conference website that I'm doing. What we would recommend for that is like potentially different than what we would recommend for something else. So having that context is helpful in those office hour sessions.
Yeah, I wanted to say too, because you just kind of hit on it a little bit. Good is such a very subjective thing, because good to me is not always going to be good to everybody else, because I'm a very particular type of designer. I'm very minimalist. I like things to be short, sweet, and to the point. And there are many sites that are either influenced by others or the designer themselves who love everything on the page. And again, it's subjective. So, at the end of the day, the question that you need to ask isn't what is good. It is what do my users need? And that will drive the decision process way more than this thought of good versus bad, stylistic versus non-stylistic. You have to meet the needs of your users, not the needs of some, random visual desire.
Yeah, and I will say, I like that you're asking these questions of like, you want to see these examples, because it shows that you care about the content that you're delivering. So that's great. Like overall, that's awesome. We love to see that. I'm going to stop sharing here. We have one final piece today, and we can also take questions after, but we wanted to try out a little poll. We've never done a poll before. There's something that we were kind of wondering about. Periodically, groups are getting rid of their websites for various reasons. They're like, hey, our name changed. Maybe we have a totally different name now. We're building a new site. Maybe we merged with another group and now we're different and we're combining everything. Maybe a program just is like no longer in use and it just needs to go away. There's various reasons that people are kind of getting rid of their sites. And up until this point, we just archive that content. In an archive state, it is, we can access it, but you all can't see it anymore, but it can be unarchived at any time. But as our service kind of grows and gets bigger, we're just recognizing we might need to ultimately then have a process for fully deleting that off of our servers, so that we're not kind of maintaining this content that's really old and bulking things up unnecessarily. So the poll that we have today is about that topic. I will launch it now. Can you all see a poll there? Cool. So the question is, if your site was going away, how long would you like us to wait before it is completely deleted? So like I said, what our process is we will archive it first. But then if you know, once it's archived, how long before we fully delete? What feels the best for all of you? So we'll give you a moment to let those answers stream in. In the meantime, if there's other questions, please feel free to post them in the chat.
Or unmute and ask.
Or unmute, yeah. If you'd like to chat, we're
You'd
happy
like to chat with us. We're not shy. By the way, we touched on, while people are doing that, Jenna touched on the team members. We'd like to introduce you to Andy Summers, who is joining the WiscWeb team as one of our, I don't really know how to best describe what Andy is going to be, but he is a developer. He does a lot of work with the AWS, the hosting aspect of all of this. He had previously been working on the, I'm not even going to try and spell it all out, but YARS project. And every time I say YARS, I have to put a pirate meme somewhere there. But Andy's been with Do It for a long time, with our group for a long time, and then he's now joining the WiscWeb team to help us, I guess, again, move forward with our I guess, growth. So, hi, Andy. You can unmute and say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Let's see here. Can an archive site be zipped and placed on an SS drive? We do have the ability to do an export of a site. We try not to do that too often because it just takes time. But it can be done if that is part of the archival process where you would like a copy of it. It is, I believe it exports as an XML. No, wait,
there's a couple different things.
Yeah.
So we could do an XML export, which is sort of like traditionally what WordPress offers. In order to use that, again, you'd need to have like a WordPress instance and then import it in. But we also offer a zip of the database and a zip of the media.
Mm-hmm.
So that is possible. We just usually request that if you're archiving a site, we do it once. Just because it is, time consuming, but that is possible. Would the WiscWeb team help us recover or keep/download content from these sites? While it is in an archive state, yes, we can easily unarchive so that you can go back in and get to that content. So consider that as well, as like, while it's in an archived state, that's fully possible. But what we're talking about is after the archive state where we're fully deleting. Once fully deleted, no, it would not be recoverable. It would be fully deleted. One can also manually archive each page on web.archive.org. Yeah, and another good one is like the
Wayback Machine.
Wayback Machine. We have heard users use that as well. Command line
Same
get
one.
can also. Oh, it
Is it the same
okay,
one,
yeah.
Johnny? Okay.
The
That makes
Wayback
sense.
Machine they still have that, but it's been renamed.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I organically once in a while, after I made some modifications, I go there and I archive the new blog pages. Like, it's not an immense amount, but it's a way to have that preserved.
That's awesome.
Now they do state that they are a backup and they don't have a backup of that backup. So
Yeah.
if someday they disappear,
Yeah,
Yeah.
gone.
It's use at your own risk type thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
so on simpler website, I've also used a command line on my Mac called wget, which has a -m for mirror, and then there's all other things that it doesn't always work, but it's a way to have a local website. And if there's not too many things about plugins and things you have to manually click and so on, and it doesn't even need a HTTP server to work once it's downloaded. If it's not too fancy, then it would work. I haven't tried it with WordPress, but it's something that could be done.
Yeah, and I would also say admins. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, there's definitely some stuff that won't work if you do something like that. Also, be cautious using command line tools against the WiscWeb sites. We do have pretty strict firewall rules in place. So if you do end up using command line tools and end up hitting our servers too many times, it will probably end up blocking your IP for about.
Yeah, it might look at your IP as an attack. Yeah.
I haven't tried, but I'll just add then that in the I've done a mirror some years back on something, but it was, if you search on Google, you'll find more information, but there is also a dash command that will say you can limit the hits like to every minute or every 10 minutes if you want to go slow.
Yeah,
it's also a possibility. Because otherwise it goes fast. But as you say, there's a lot of hits, then that's not, it may look bad. And there is a provision in the wget, and there may be other programs to do that, but there's a provision to go slow enough so it's not hinders the working or the what you said.
Yeah, yeah, definitely put that in place if you're going to try and do something like that. A lot of the attacks that we get on WiscWeb are mildly similar to what you're describing, where someone will just point command line tools at the WiscWeb sites and fire off thousands of requests, and then our firewall picks that up and starts blocking that. So
yeah.
I'm just noticing we are at time, so I did put the poll results. Can you all see those? Looks like we're leaning towards the 1 year mark. So this is really helpful information. Thank you for participating in that poll, and thank you for joining us today. We'll cap the recording there, but we can hang out, or I can hang out in here a little bit longer if anyone has questions.
All right. Thanks for joining, everybody.